on, dudes? My name is Terrence Latimer. I am an information communications technology consultant based in the Mojave Desert, and I am here to talk to you a bit, or continue our conversation, I should say, that we've been having all week on social media, particularly on LinkedIn and TikTok, regarding visualizing text-based information. And it's part of just like a broader hypothesis that I've got. We're living in the information age, right? We all have access to an abundant amount of information in 2023. One of the more exciting things that everyone's sort of talking about in, professional circles and creative circles alike is the advent or the release of ChatGPT, which is an AI-based search tool that allows you to have dynamic conversations for all intents and purposes, with a robot, right? So the traditional version of that is, in the form of, Google, right? Search platforms. And, we talked a little bit about last week how I'm applying, this concept of searches or running queries in the form of a job search, right? Using a platform like LinkedIn is this process of taking text-based data, right? Keywords, phrases, what I like to call love language, in order to then render the result of the information that is going to allow you to solve a problem, right? In this instance, hey, you are looking for an operations job, you go to LinkedIn, and maybe you're going to run a search on LinkedIn for operations jobs in, whatever city you're based in, right? Well, in 2023, with ChatGPT, it's no longer this like stagnant process of, entering a few like keywords or phrases and hoping for the best, right? Putting our best adventurer search hats on in order to find the information that's most relevant to us. In 2023, we are having dynamic conversations with robots, right? Where we're not just like asking a bunch, putting together a string of keywords, phrases, and just, hoping for the best. In 2023, we can refine our searches, and the robot, this tool, is going to respond to us and, might ask like prodding questions or ask for additional details or information in order for us to get the results that are most interesting to us, right? And so, as a part of just what we've been learning this week, as part of, my commitment to not only learn every day, but to ideally teach you all something every day, we've been talking about, just some ways that we can leverage, concepts around technical writing, around like creative writing, understanding complex information systems, understanding the way that we communicate, how language is this dynamic sort of thing, right? Yesterday we talked a bit about, visualizing, we talked about communicating complex ideas through technology, right? Particularly in the form of ERP systems or enterprise resource planning systems. And today we're talking about this concept of visualizing text-based data through concepts around stories, right? Particularly, there's a concept that I really want you all to learn about in the form of user stories, which we'll get into. Now, I just, for all intents and purposes, gave you an example of what a user story is by describing what that process is for running a search or running a query, right? Now, believe it or not, there are, really sophisticated and smart engineers, designers, developers that are all working for platforms like Google or platforms like LinkedIn, who, for all intents and purposes, designed this, or their tools, right, their platforms, based off of the anecdotal story that I just gave you, right? Hey, you are a person, you are having a problem, and so you are going to this platform that you believe can solve a problem for you based off of, the industry that they serve, right? Now, Google and LinkedIn are obviously different types of platforms, but a lot of the functionality is the same in the form of running searches and running queries, which we talked about last week. So if you haven't watched that 20-minute video on my YouTube channel, please go to YouTube, learn a little bit more about this process of running searches, running queries in databases. So really excited to be chatting with you all. What I really want you to walk away with today is just understanding that stories and storytelling are so crucial, in my opinion, to being able to navigate and understand the information age, right? Storytelling is the ability to make the movie in your head match the movie in my head, and vice versa, right? And the thing about it is that we tell stories every day, right? You tell your friend, like, where you went out to eat and why it was like so delicious, and that then communicates to them why they need to try that place, right? Or you communicate to a coworker that perhaps you're looking for a new job, and these are the reasons why you're looking for a job. Maybe you hate your boss, or you're not making enough money, or et cetera, right? So the idea is that, I just want you to walk away with today an understanding that stories are just a subset of communications. Communications are a subset of information, right? And there are ways that we can manipulate those things, right? Storytelling, information, communications, in order to design and develop digital products and services, right? And then also to get the information that we need in order to do the things that we want to do, right? And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today in the form of user stories, empathy mapping, and customer journey mapping. And so we just got done talking a bit about just this concept of being able to visualize text-based information, right? Whether that is an email, whether it's a blog, one thing that I really want you to walk away with today is that in the information age, right, blobs of text, just like, they're not going to get the job done anymore, right? People are more complicated than that. And don't get me wrong, reading is probably never, ever going to go away completely, right? But just understanding that text-based information has the ability to be that much richer if we give it or if we give people the ability to visualize what the text is saying. And so if you consider like the strength of, writing a blog and then inserting a picture, right? And a picture that then helps to connect dots or connect concepts that are associated, with the text that you have, put pen to paper, right? Well, what's the next level of that? Video, right? So how rich is a series of photos together that forms a video that then offers sound? Okay. So going back to concepts around storytelling, user stories, and visualizing text-based data, right? So I talked a little bit about the importance of creating more dynamic content or more dynamic information and communications in the form of adding additional layers to your text-based data, right? So, adding photos to your blog, adding videos to your blog, adding colors, right? Illustrations, visualizations, ways for people to, again, make the movie in your head, match the movie in their head, and vice versa. And that's where communications gets really exciting, because that then is when we get to jump over some of the psychological barriers that people have regarding accepting, understanding, and then doing something with the messages that we are trying to transmit to them. Whether it's, that you are qualified to take the job that you're interested in, or whether or not, they should buy the product or service that you're interested in selling them, right? We want to make the transmission of information as easy as possible so that they can quickly, put up, some of their filters, right, to then understand the important aspects of the information that they need in order to do something, right? And so user stories are one great way in order for us to do that, right? User stories are all about really planning out the process of understanding, right, the way that your information is going to be transmitted and received based off of who the user is. And, user sounds like such like this complex term, hopefully it's not. All a user is a person, right? And the way that I like to sort of interchangeably use the concept of user is, I like to maybe switch that out with character, right? And so if we are then, sort of considering, the movie or the information, the story that you are trying to transmit, it's, what is the character having to go through in order to then get to the place that you want them to be, right? And so if we then, just sort of understand that stories have a beginning, middle, and an end, right? Typically, if you know anything about storytelling, that middle section is very interesting, that beginning section is very interesting, and then also that end section needs to be interesting, right? We want our character, we want users to go from point A to point B and get all the way to hopefully the end of the story, right, which is point Z. And ultimately, my hope is that at the end, at the point Z, that is where your solution is, right? Ideally they have, gone through this process of understanding that they have a problem, right? And ideally your solution, is able to solve that problem for them, right? But it's then being empathetic and understanding what their journey is, right, in order to go about this process of getting their problem solved. And we all have to go through things, right? There are highs, there are lows, but understanding that your customers or the people that you are trying to communicate your dynamic information to, right, they all have their own problems and pain points. And this process of visualizing text-based data through user stories, through storytelling, is one great way that we can, think of the different ways to help our customers, our users, understanding who they are, what character they are in this story, so that they can get to that place that we want them to be. So I'm going to give you a quick definition of what a user story is, right? And I'm just pulling this up. I just ran a quick Google search, right? Again, Google search. User story, or define user stories. And so we'll go ahead and tell the Wikipedia definition of user stories. And Wikipedia defines a user story, or they say in software development and product management, a user story is an informal, natural language description of features of a software system. They are written from the perspective of the end user or user of a system, and may be recorded on index cards, post-it notes, or digitally in project management software. Depending on the project, user stories may be written by different stakeholders like client, user, management, or development team. And it's going to give you, more, user stories are a type of boundary object, blah, 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 right? And then they provide like the definition, the history of user stories. Now, I don't want you to get thrown off from this concept of software development, because we are all like either using software, leveraging software, and for all intents and purposes, software is really just a service, right? It is software is a programming language, right? In order to translate information or features or services to people, right? But I don't want you to get too bogged down on this concept of software development as it relates to user stories, right? Because ultimately, all the user story is a tool in order for you to transmit information based off of, again, like the service that you are looking to provide to someone. And so, in my opinion, what I do love about this definition is that they, sort of embedded in that were some concepts or some ideas on how we can begin this process of translating or transmitting user stories. You might have mentioned, or you might have heard me mention post-it notes and note cards, right? Which are really great ways to get started, in this process of mapping out, right? What that journey is to go from point A to point B, all the way to point Z, right? And so, some great ways, in order to generate user stories are, the first place that I like to start is in really defining who your customer persona is, right? Going back to that concept on who the user is, who the character is. And this can be, it's a lot more fun, in my opinion, if you're doing it with other people, but you can do this process on your own, which is, understanding, definitely understand the message that you are looking to transmit, right? But then, the second part of that is understanding who you are trying to talk to, and then, a deeper level of that is, well, why are you trying to talk to them? Right? Why should they care about what it is that you have to say? Right? Why should they care to read your blog or your email? Right? And then, on a different level, how can they read about your information? Where are they reading about your information? When are they reading about that information? Right? And as you begin to answer some of those questions, that then is, we're beginning to really define who our character is in this broader story, so that we can then, do some of that refining work in order to contextualize why the information that you are looking to translate to them is relevant to them, right? Because again, we're in the information age. We're all getting, I think I read recently that the average consumer receives anywhere from 6,000 to 10,000 brand messages per day. Right? So if you then are empathetic to who the character is in your story, it's understanding, well, one of the problems that they have is that there's a bunch of people constantly bugging them, trying to force information down on them, right? That they might not care about or aren't relevant to them, because we all have day jobs, right? And we all have, maybe family and friends, and we've all got problems, right? So one of the, as a communicator, one of the first things that we want to be mindful of is the thing that we have to say worth saying, right? Because if it's not worth saying, it's better not to say anything. Because, if you're saying things that don't really matter or just, garbage, just word garbage, right? People, they're not going to want to know you, they're not going to trust you, and they're not going to like you, right? And the thing with communications is that being known, being trusted, and being liked are half of the battle. I mean, that's probably most of the battle, right? And, being empathetic then to our character is understanding that they have their own problems that they are navigating, and our solutions are designed to help them navigate their problem, right? We don't want to add additional problems to them, right? So, this process then of visualizing, the story that our users or that our characters are having to go through really begins and ends with understanding and contextualizing who our customer is, right? Who it is that we're trying to talk to. And by answering, some of those simple questions in the form of who, what, where, when, how, and why is a very good place to start, right? And, I would, recommend that you check out some exercises, some workshops maybe, some videos as it relates to this process of developing ideal customer personas, right? And we can answer those questions, who, what, where, when, how, and why, in probably 15, 20, a million different ways, right? But the more that we're able to, complete or to create this complete picture of who our ultimate end user is, who this character is, well then from there, right, that 80-20 rule sort of applies, right? If we can really narrow in on who that one person is, well, then typically there's social circles, right? If we, understand concepts around the network effect, right? Those key people are then going to be responsible, those 20% of people are going to be, responsible for 80% of our success, right? Because they're going to, if they're having a relevant problem that your solution is able to solve for, well, then typically you're not even going to have to communicate that message to anyone but them, right? Because they're going to be your brand advocates. They're going to take your message and they're going to take it as a gospel, and they're going to want to tell other people about it, right? Because you have done something so beautiful in the form of helping them to understand the problem that they're having and then providing or offering a solution to that, right? And so then, at this standpoint, not only have you, solved a problem for somebody that you care about, hopefully, I really hope that you care about your customers or, the companies that you perhaps are interested in working for, but then you have other people who are then, singing your graces. They're saying, hey, you should go work with or for this person because they're so rad, right? Which is like the best marketing ever. That's less text-based information that you have to be responsible for, right? All right. Okay, so this next section of the video, we're talking a bit about connecting some of these concepts that we've already talked about, right? In the form of visualizing text-based information, applying, concepts around visualization to developing empathy for our customer, right? Again, we're trying to transfer the movie that's in your head into the movie that's in your customer's head, and the next step of that process then is understanding, what character they are in this movie and why it's relevant to them. Right? It's really, developing empathy and understanding for, what they have to go through. And so that then is the next part of this journey, which is mapping out what this process should look like, right? As it relates to the information that you are looking to transmit or to communicate. So if we are considering this process of customer journey mapping, right, it's really sort of, understanding what those different points of the process are. I've been using this analogy of getting from point A to point Z, right? And so it's then, just sort of understanding, right, and being able to define what those different points in the process are. And what that then allows us to do, right, are to have relevant communications available to the customer, right, or to our end user to help sort of point them in the right direction, right? We want them to we want it to be a little bit linear, right? And we know that life isn't linear. We all get distracted, right? But the beautiful thing about having a map is that maps allow us to get back to the right road, right? The right route, so that we can get to that place, our destination, the place that we want to get to. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly define what a customer journey map is. And you might have also heard some interchangeable language in the form of empathy mapping, which is another great concept that I would encourage you to study. But let's go ahead and see what the internet has to say about this process of customer journey mapping. Okay, so there are a couple of results. I'm going to go ahead and go with delighted.com. Qualtrics has a good definition, and then HubSpot has a great definition. But yeah, let's go ahead and go with delighted.com because I'm impressed with their SEO. They got ranked first in the ranking. And so what delighted.com, and that is actually a Qualtrics brand, believe it or not, but they say, defining what is a customer journey map. And they say a customer journey map is a visual storyline of every engagement of a customer has with a service, brand, or product. The creation of a journey map puts the organization directly in the mind of the consumer so they can see and understand their customers' processes, needs, and perceptions, right? And so again, if we're just sort of considering this product, I've been using this example the past couple weeks of looking for a job, right? So if we're then considering how LinkedIn decided to design their site in the format that they did, right? They just sort of maybe created this wide bucket of people that are looking for jobs. How do we build a product, right? Which is ultimately a service, right? A recruiting, quote unquote, agency and or platform that, most of the world's job seekers, or at least most American job seekers, are going to leverage in order to, network and, stay engaged, and in order to solve this problem of trying to find a job, right? And so, that customer journey map could start from anywhere, right? Maybe it starts with, getting in the mind of someone who recently got laid off. Or maybe, getting in the mind of someone who has recently heard that their company is going through an acquisition, right? And there might be layoffs, right? Or, perhaps they, decided to put the hat on of a first-time college grad, right? Or somebody that, just got their master's degree and doesn't really know where to start, right? So, that process of, contextualizing how your product or service solves a problem for the diverse set of people or users or customers or characters, right, that you want to be a part of your movie is one great way to get this process of customer journey mapping, right, started, because that then leads to, okay, well, we know that this person has a problem. We know that our product or service is a solution to this problem, right? So then maybe what's the next step of this process, right? Well, I just got done saying, well, sometimes people, they are going to run queries or searches, right? Maybe they're going to, do this process of information seeking. Hey, I know that I'm a college grad and I need a new job, right? But I don't know where to start. So, maybe they are looking for a blog post or a video on 10 best ways to look for a job or 10 best ways to network, right? Well, in this instance, LinkedIn might say, okay, well, we know that we've got this, like the endpoint of this, point Z at the end of the story is that we've got a job board with literally millions of jobs, right? But maybe this person isn't ready. They don't know what to do with what they don't know what to do with, right? So perhaps it makes a lot more sense to nurture, right, and help this person get from point A to point B, which, might be a video or a set of videos or blogs, et cetera, that describe the best ways to start your job search. Right? Which this is a bit of a reframe, right? Where, in traditional media, years ago, it was all about like, hey, this is my product and service, this is why I'm so great, I'm going to save you money, this is all the value that you have, et cetera, et cetera. Well, again, in 2023, the average consumer receives anywhere from 6,000 to 10,000 brand messages per day, right? So the days of just shoving your information, down, into people, it's like, you got to be kind of careful with that, right? Because pretty soon that has the ability to impact your reputation, right? And in today's digital heavy age where people can run a quick query or ask their friends about, what their experience was like, that has a direct impact on your ability to be known, to be trusted, and to be liked, right? And, something that I read recently, I think it was like 15% of all online reviews are, fake or phony, yet they have the ability to cost a business, an organization, a person, right, 30 potential customers, right? So something to be mindful of, right? We want to be super careful with, like, not only do we want to release information or data that is, true and, trustworthy and reliable, right? But we also want to do it in a way that is contextual to the user, where it's not all about us, it's actually about them, right? And we can apply that thinking to a job search, right? Going out and spraying and playing, trying to get your resume in front of everybody and anyone. Well, let me tell you, recruiters talk to each other, right? And if you are going about this process in a methodology that is, not above board, right? You're probably not going to land a bunch of leads, right? So, my hope is that you begin and end this journey with understanding that there are characters that are looking to solve a problem, right? And it's in having that process, right? That map that gives them the content, the information, the roadmap they need, the signposts, I should say, that will then get them to that next point, right? And again, I just want you to value yourself. If you are in this process of looking for a job, understand that your recruiter, right, the people that you want to get your resume in front of, they're having a problem. They need to fill a role, right? And so if you are not giving them what they need in order to make an informed decision to get to the end of the story, right, which is ultimately giving you an offer letter and hiring you for the role, you're doing yourself and you're doing them a disservice, because your product, your service, your skill set, your experience, those are like the things that are making the story that much more believable, relevant, and important, right? They're moving people from point A to point B. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and get out of here after this section, right? Which is visualizing text-based data through stories. Again, we started out this conversation discussing the importance of making your content dynamic by, again, we don't want just like text-based information or data, right? We really want to visualize what the text is, right? We spent some time defining what a user story is. We talked a bit about customer journey mapping. Now we're going to talk about visualizing text-based data through stories, and then I'm going to go ahead and get you out on your merry way, right? So something that I want us to consider. This process of telling stories is inherent to the human condition. We all tell stories every day. Right? And so, you are sort of doing yourself and others a disservice if you are just overwhelming them with a bunch of information, right? Again, like data, information, those are sort of overwhelming, right? But a story, a review, a point of view, like these are, not just content, but it's in the context, right? And that sort of overlap of the art and science of communications, right? That then, in my opinion, is where the real magic has the ability to happen. So if we consider how, the combination of user stories, right, which is understanding the character, right, and then, applying that to what the character's journey is, well, then all of a sudden, things in our brains, they start to, connect dots. Because now all of a sudden we're like, hey, well, I remember a similar story, or that's relevant to me, or that happened to a friend, et cetera, right? And before you know it, people aren't really even listening or reading the information that they're transmitting anymore, or maybe that they are, but maybe at a lower capacity, because all of a sudden we're tapping into feelings, we're tapping into emotions, right? And feelings and emotions can do wonders as it relates to helping people get, make a decision on something, right? Because ultimately that's what we want to do. We want people to do something with the information, with the story that we are telling them, right? And so, the best way for us to do that is to make people feel something, right? Whether it's anger or sadness, or, hopefully you're not focusing on fear, or, but again, because that then allows people to internalize what's going on and understand how this content is contextual and relevant to them, so that they can then emote something, right? In the form of, hey, I want to purchase your product or service, or hey, I want to do business with you, or hey, I am confident that you are the person that can solve this problem for me, so I'm going to send you an offer letter, right? And so, there are ways to do that, right? In the form of, presentations, in the form of brochures, in the form of videos, right? But the idea is that we really want to do this preparation work of, really sort of defining what our text is, so that we can then identify ways, right, to get people from point A to point B based off of the wave of emotions, the wave of feelings, right, that allows them to unlock or to trigger, right, the emotional capacity to do X, Y, or Z. So that's all that I got. This video, again, is just about the importance of text-based data, applying that to user stories, how empathy mapping is a great way for us to do that, right? And then ways to visualize that text-based data through dynamic content, right? And again, effective visualizations in the form of storytelling allow you to connect on a deeper level, not on a surface level with your end user or the character, the person that's receiving your message, right? But allows them to go back directly to their experience, to their personality, and how, by, being able to trigger their hearts and minds and spirits will then allow them to physically do something, right? And in this instance, hopefully it's to engage with you. So hopefully you found this video helpful. Again, my name is Terrence Latimer. I'm an informations, communications, and technology consultant based in the Mojave Desert. I like to write and blog and talk about all things information, communications, and technology. Feel free to follow me on Medium, LinkedIn, or on YouTube. Appreciate you all. Have a great rest of your day.